Hello everyone, welcome to the Old Man and the Read. My name is Jerry. Today I'm going to talk about some books that they're true stories, but they're so unbelievable that you have a hard time believing that they're actually not fiction. The idea came after I thought about a couple of the books I had read, so I went through my bookshelf looking for those and any others that I could think of that might fit in this category. Of the two books I was originally thinking of, one I located, the other I couldn't find on my shelf anywhere, but I'll go ahead and talk about it anyway. So I'll show you the first book I have here, and this is a book that I read, and after I finished it I was thinking, this can't possibly be true, and so I did a little research and found out it actually was true. So this is a book titled Project Orion. It's written by George Dyson, and George Dyson is the son of Freeman Dyson, who was a really famous theoretical physicist involved in the nuclear arms race. So this book is about a idea that occurred to the scientists working on the nuclear project that began in the 1950s and on into the 1960s, and it was founded by those scientists, and it was their idea that a spacecraft could be propelled by nuclear explosions or nuclear bombs. They found that it would be possible, theoretically, to propel a much larger spacecraft than you can imagine, and it would have been powerful enough to launch something the size of a ship, basically. But it could propel it into space and then beyond. And how it would be done is a succession of small nuclear bombs exploded behind the craft. The craft would have what was called a pusher plate to protect it, and it would act like a shock absorber, basically, to propel the ship. And the craft would require a huge supply of nuclear bombs that would be exploded just very rapidly after the launch. One of the shortcomings of this is that the thrust created by the bombs on the ship would have been enough to just crush a person just by the thrust. But anyway, this was an idea that was seriously considered, researched. They worked on it for quite a number of years, and it finally was given up when the nuclear test ban treaty was signed in the 1960s. But unbelievable that this was actually a serious project they were working on. The next story I have, and most of these are more along this line, but the book is titled Voyage of Madmen by Peter Nichols. And this is basically a story that of a contest to sail solo around the world. This was in 1968, and there were 9 men who accepted the challenge and entered the race. Of the 9 men, 4 of them dropped out before they left the Atlantic. 1 quit at the Cape of Good Hope. Another very interesting one committed suicide after he had actually stopped at a port and just pretended to be sailing, keeping a log, and he eventually committed suicide. Another sank just short of the ship sank short of their final destination. Another man decided that it was all too commercial and sailed off to Tahiti instead, and so there was just one man who completed the trip and won the prize. The next book I have is titled Adrift, and this is by Stephen Callahan, and it's a tale of survival, basically. But Callahan survived after being stranded on a lifeboat for 76 days in the Atlantic. He describes the ordeal in great detail, and he talks about how he was able to put a few supplies on his raft before his ship had sunk, and how he survived by just eating raw fish. The next book I have is Ordeal by Hunger by George R. Stewart. This is an incredible story. It's a well-known one. It's about the Donner Party and their survival, but this goes into good detail on the whole trip as well as their being stranded. But the story just is a whole series of bad decisions all along the way. First of all, they got off late in the season to be going across country to California is where they were headed. They then got some bad advice and were misled by a trail leader who knew a shortcut that would save 350 miles from their trip. So they decided to follow him on that. But then they discovered that it was a disastrous decision. They had to actually make their own trail, cut down some trees to get through. So it just really delayed them even further. And then when they finally reached the Sierra, as they were going up the mountain, they were too late in the season and heavy snow began falling, and so they were stuck at near Donner Lake, which is named after the Donner Party. And then the book goes into detail about their really dire attempts to survive through the winter there, and of course they're well known for the cannibalism that was involved. The next book is Island of the Lost by Joan Druitt, and this is really an incredible story about two separate shipwrecks that happened at basically the same time on the same island, but they were on opposite sides of each island. One of the shipwrecks, the Captain Musgrave, kept his wits about him. He kept the men organized, and he was able to lead them back to safety. They, under very harsh conditions, they were able to build a boat and then sail it in rough seas, finally to reach New Zealand later. At the other end of the island, a Captain Del Grano lost all control of his men, and he eventually, they lost all but 3 of the men until they were rescued. And basically, it was like 18 months later that of the 19, only 3 survived. and they had turned to murder and cannibalism to survive. The next book I have is The Long Walk by Slavomir Rowitz, and Rowitz had been sentenced to 25 years in a Russian gulag. He suffered severely in the Siberian winters and from cold and hunger, and then he and a few other men escaped, and then the story is about their incredible trek south. They took, I think it was over 4,000 miles on foot through extremely harsh conditions. It included going across the Gobi Desert and then over the Himalayas, and finally reaching India 9 months later. And the last book I'll talk about is Calibans Shore by Stephen Taylor, and this is really a harrowing tale about the shipwreck of the Grosvenor that ran aground on the coast of South Africa in 1783. Most of the passengers and crew were able to safely get to shore, but were left hundreds of miles from any European colony, and so it details their attempts to survive. The captain and his crew abandoned the passengers just shortly after they got there, and so everybody was left to just fend for themselves. And the tale talks about the desperation of the survivors and their attempts to just continue surviving longer. And it broke into little groups, and it talks about the different paths that each of them took. But those are the books I read. True stories, just unbelievably unbelievable that they were actually true. So I want to thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on another video. Thanks.